Did Marilyn pay for her book?
Yes, she did.
She said she did, but then I thought,
Yes.
I'd be just like, no.
Yes, she
I
did.
knew she would. So then last night, I
Okay.
last minute at this talk and thought, oh, I should pick up Marilyn's book.
Well, welcome everyone to Fox Bookstore. I'm Terry. I'm one of the two owners of the store. We opened in July of 2020 on 6th Avenue, not far from here, and we moved to this location at the end of January 2024. So we've been in the community for 5 years now, and we continue to grow and have events and go out into the community and spread literacy. I am so excited Karen's here. When your publicist emailed me, I was super excited because I'm a horse girl myself. I've been a lifelong horse girl and just recently had to give up my horse because of finances being tight. So just a little bit about Karen. Karen was born horse crazy in Albert Lea, Minnesota, also my home state, and never got over that stage. She even took her horse to college with her. Her family also allowed her to have dogs, hamsters, and parakeets. And she was always bringing home birds, rabbits, frogs, salamanders, and snakes that she assumed needed rescuing. Karen wanted to be a veterinarian, of course, but when she stood at the blackboard in 7th grade and wrote the formula for water as 2HO, she knew she would have to find some other career path. I realized I get motion sickness, so I couldn't be an astronaut.
We are weeded out. Yeah.
She graduated from Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, and attended graduate school in English literature at the University of Minnesota. As a staff reporter at the Minnesota Star, later the Star Tribune, she wrote feature stories, editorials, news, book reviews, and interviewed celebrities and authors for 2 decades. Her freelance work has appeared in publications ranging from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal to Practical Horsemen, Cowboys and Indians, Condé Nast Traveler, and Sailing Magazine. Her commentaries have appeared in the Star Tribune and on the Minnesota Public Radio website. Karen's work has won Lowell Thomas Awards for both investigative reporting and for maritime journalism. She has won numerous awards in the equine industry, including 2 AQHA Steel Dust Awards and the U.S. Equestrian Award. She currently specializes in writing and producing privately commissioned biographies. Welcome to Iowa. Back to Iowa. Karen, we were talking, you have roots in Iowa.
I have roots in Iowa. I have parents who grew up here, and it's always bittersweet. It really is. I've been sort of staggering around the field trying to remember what it was like here when I was a little kid. And of course, what I remember, among other things, is the horses my grandparents had.
I'm sorry, but the sound is
let me-
that I can't hear you.
I will shut the furnace off.
She is.
No.
Yes.
Hey, I will speak up and I will come forward a little. Will that help?
There we go. That should help. Thank you for saying something. So you were saying.
Is it going on?
Yeah, it will.
I'm sorry. Yes, my parents are from small towns and farms in Iowa. And what I remember, of course, as a kid, most of all, was playing in my grandfather's blacksmith shop and playing in the carriage barn, on my great-grandmother's sleigh, which I later had hauled up to Albert Lea, and I drove it all over, including onto the golf course where I broke the shafts off the front and had to walk my horse home. And it's now in the Historic Society Museum, and so is a painting of me driving. So I took the sleigh and the horse to college. And this guy went to college with me, so he knows. With sleigh bells. Anyway, it was a great way to grow up in Iowa and southern Minnesota at the time. I'd like to read a little bit. It will turn off.
It should, yeah.
It really will turn off. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but the sound is
It
still
should
going.
be going off shortly. It ramped up and now it has to ramp back down. So.
Okay. What is it in our brain, mostly female brains, that fires up in some of us in the presence of horses? If you have chosen to read this, you're almost certainly one of us, or want to understand one of us. There is a reason, or maybe a set of common symptoms, traits, or predisposing conditions that define a horse lover, and I am searching for those. I have come to realize, looking not only for the nature of this love, but also for the nature of the women who are gripped by it. We are called horse crazy, and there is no treatment for it. For more than a quarter century, I have traveled farms and stables, horse shows, saddle shops, county and state fairs, equine expositions, and racetracks throughout the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand, probing into this passion, asking questions about the equine-centered life so many of us share. Patterns point to how we are similar, why we are seemingly born this way, how the choices we make to be with these powerful animals reflects a certain appetite, spiritually, physically, and mentally. I want to know what it is, what it isn't, introduce some people, and share some of my adventures probing into this joyous, incurable passion. When we are horse lovers, we enter a world of dangerous liaisons. Riding accidents are more common than accidents in skiing, motorcycling, and football, and they are more serious, largely head and neck injuries. Riding is the leading cause of traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, which surprised me, frankly. To be fair, the fact that many of us refuse to wear helmets factors heavily there. For those of us who have loved horses, truly, madly, deeply, however, these are natural occurrences. They are seldom, if ever, deterrents. We are even a little proud of the price we pay for joy and freedom in a friendship like no other. In fact, ask any emergency room staff about horse girls, horsewomen, and horsemen, and they will tell you the first question we pose when we are trundled in is always, how soon will I be able to ride? And if we are conscious, it is usually preceded by, don't cut my boots off, please.
Or the breeches.
Is this behavior not a sign of addiction, compulsion, magical thinking? Just what is it? I would like to describe what it felt like when I was a kid riding, just briefly. And I think it's true now, too. And it makes me feel young forever to ride, or just immature, I don't know. What was the sensation I felt most often then? Aliveness. Let me recall it for you. I am riding Molly, she was my Welsh pony, bareback in the summer heat, thick with the aroma of newly cut alfalfa in the fields. I am small enough that her mane whips my face, her choppy pony trot and canter bounce me a bit loose on her silky back. In the warmth of oaks and acorn-infused soil along the banks of the lake, we go into the chattering of robins, the scolding of squirrels, the breeze over limestone gravel, the hollow pounding of her pink hooves, boom, 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 sounds on the wooden bridge, where creosote-rich emanations from pilings in the water below are joined by notes of dead carp and rise up again in the perfume of water lilies clustered in the curve of the bank. To say troubles drop away when we ride is true, but not complete, and not the point. It is what rushes in. It is back to the old gods of the amygdala and raw sensation, fear, desire, triumph, desperation at times, and joy, and such joy. That's where being with horses propels me. It's where girls and women find themselves in ever greater numbers and in rising and dramatic disproportion to boys and men. According to the American Horse Council, some 38 million Americans have an interest in horses. That doesn't mean they own them. That means they're horse enthusiasts. And of those, 70 to 85% are women. This is a worldwide phenomenon. This isn't just the Midwest. And it's getting more intense as women migrate into all the sports that they were forbidden from entering in past decades, whether it's in the Olympics where women were not allowed on the riding teams, or in vet school, equine vets are almost all women, or getting to be now. So we are dominating. Here's what it's like again to ride. At car speed, we may perceive more, but we sense less. We pass through the world, but we are not of it. On horseback, at the tempo of about 6 miles an hour, we experience life in a primal way. To ride is to be most perfectly alive, responsible only to stay on, and be aware of nothing but ourselves and our horse. It's not that I don't know we are hooked. Sometimes I introduce myself to other horse lovers as, "Hi, my name is Karin, and I'm a horseaholic. It's been 38 hours since I was last in the barn," or something like that. I am not in recovery from this compulsion, however, and indications are that none of us ever will be. In this book, I look for the words to tell you that riding is something like dance, only with the threat muted but occasionally firing upward through your nerves of harm, then subsiding again in roundness, balance, steady breathing, the horse's breath, our sweat, our effort, and perhaps something more intangible intertwined. I strain for descriptions, something accurate, even just adequate, of what it is to feel, to touch, to watch, to ride a horse. I look outward and investigate why we are who we are. I also look inward at my own family heritage and growing up, for I am, after all, an incurable, crazed, bred in the bone horse girl. So the pursuit of the truth about who we are and what this phenomenon is has taken me to Scotland and Virginia and Montana and California and Canada and New Zealand. And I write about some of those adventures in here, but I also interview anthropologists, sociologists, anthrozoologists, cultural anthropologists, fox hunting masters, veterinarians, cowgirls, and it's all packed into here. I saw something I'd like to read you. Among the places I have talked horses, and we call it talking horses, right? Let's talk horses. It's sort of like the way many men talk about football, except we do the sport. We are not talking about something we don't do. We live the sport. So I will tell you about one of the incidents in which I talked horses with someone you might know. This happened to take place in Wales in the spring in a castle. And it's true. I'm a journalist. I don't write fiction, right? On this early spring evening at a banquet in Caerphilly Castle in Wales, Lord Gordon Perry of Nayland, chairman of the Wales Tourist Board, steered Prince Charles from visitor to visitor. I was there through a Minnesota friend connected to Lord Perry by Society of Welsh Male Choirs. As he and Prince Charles approached, I saw him lean toward and presumably brief the prince before introducing me as an American journalist. "Hello," I said to Prince Charles, grasping his offered hand. "Whatever happened to your eyes?" I could get away with this impudence because at the time I was young, blonde, and swathed tightly from shoulder to toe in black velvet set off with an opera-length string of fake pearls. As an American, I was unaware of diplomatic protocol, which dictates that when meeting royals, one must not speak until spoken to. In my defense, nobody told me this until years later. Prince Charles, in black tie below visibly bruised eyes, murmured to me, "Hello, Miss Winegar. I'm pleased to meet you. How are you enjoying this visit to Wales? I understand you are a journalist." "Yes, but don't worry. I'm not working today, just savoring this spring trip," I answered. And then I blurted inappropriately at the future and now King of England. I had tottered over the castle cobblestones, through the torchlit keep, and into the banquet room on black pumps with 4-inch heels, newly purchased from Harrods in London. So I stood straight and immobile thanks to my ridiculous shoes. No, I was not working, but in direct reporter-like fashion, I asked the question about his eyes. "It was a riding accident," said the prince, smiling and not outwardly the least perturbed. "He is, for the record, more attractive than his photos, and he exuded a kind of genteel attentiveness." Nearby, Diana, Princess of Wales, glided around the same banquet hall, every bit as tall, glamorous, and palely lovely as her photos, moving as if her shoes, at least, were not the least bit painful. Theirs was a mixed marriage, I knew. Diana did not ride, or at least she had not learned when they first met. I do ride and am, in the way of many horsewomen, British, American, or otherwise, obsessed with it. "What kind of horse were you on?" I asked him. Wrong again. I now suppose no questions to royals, egads. "It was a thoroughbred," he replied. "You should have been on an Arabian," I said, saucily and utterly wrong-headedly. I'm so embarrassed. I'm still embarrassed. At the time, I knew nothing about polo or the fitness it takes to play the game. I was ignorant of the huge blackthorn hedges that riders in British hunts face at speed, or the nerve it takes to clear stone walls and do so hour after hour, or how to survive these sports season after season as Charles had done since childhood. My interest in everything equine has no boundaries. That's my explanation and occasional excuse. It is not deterred by rank, age, or nationality. And while it provides a common and usually welcome topic, I wonder if it is a bit of a pathology or a reliable way of overcoming social anxiety as much as it is a truly international language. One midwinter, decades after the Caerphilly Castle incident, I was shopping in my food co-op. And there in the produce section stood 3 young Amish men, replete with straw hats, dark blue suits, and cascading beards. I groped for a reason to talk with them and found it instantly. So, do you drive standardbreds or Morgans? I inquired. Both, they answered in unison, and we were off, discussing the merits of synthetic harness versus leather. I turned out to be the traditionalist, preferring leather. They turned out to be the modern adapters, preferring synthetic for ease of maintenance. We chatted next to the heaps of rutabagas and squash, comparing the merits of old-time sharpshods, horseshoes with points for gripping on the ice, that I grew up with versus Drill Tech, the modern traction shoes they use. I was perfectly at ease, although perhaps they were not, since I was sporting nothing but yoga leggings and a t-shirt. In these, as in nearly every situation and decision, the horsey aspect and possibilities have been my compass. So when it came to college, I would, of course, go where my horse could go too. I did take my horse to college, and I'm not from a rich family, so I waitressed a lot. And I hitchhiked to Dundas, which is a few miles from Northfield. Hitchhiking, that was dumb, right?
Yep.
And I saw my horse all the time. I would like to read a little more. Again, what does it feel like to ride? And if I'm talking to riders, you already know, one of my jobs in this book was not only to ask the scientists and the intellectuals and the experts, but to recreate for people, to articulate as best I could what it feels like to be on a horse or with a horse. In November, riding at twilight through the matte gold cornfields and acres of cattails framed by oaks gone black in the sunset, I am wearing nothing appropriate for the deer opener weekend. Aboard little brown Morgan gelding, I am bundled in elderly wool sweaters and thick pull-on breeches, their various rips whip-stitched into welts with my feed sack sewing skills. I am blowing my nose with one finger of my mismatched winter gloves. No blaze orange vest is needed to keep me safe, because I am in that liminal trance that rises when I have one leg on each side of a horse. Although I know about climate change and climate chaos and political apocalypse, and although I woke up feeling cranky and unloved, for now I feel all is well. All is well as his unshod hooves crush the frozen, short-shorn alfalfa. All is well as we slipped into the woods where the deer flash among the birches, where woodpeckers dart and bob and a pair of eagles abide. All is well as we follow the side-by-side prints of a pair of coyotes in a rime of new snow. Millions of other girls were born this way, and because it never stops, for a while, any while, in the company of horses, for us, all is truly well. Questions? Responses?
What was the most surprising thing you learned from some of the scientists that you spoke with?
First of all, I want to put this in context. I have literally been running around the world for 30 years, more than 30 years, asking questions and doing interviews. So it's very hard to remember, but hard to rank what I learned and what surprised me. It didn't surprise me so much as affirmed what I instinctively knew, that all of us have the same response. We like the smell of leather. We like the smell of horses. We like the sound of horses. We thrill to listen to them breathing and chewing hay. It's a sensual relationship. Many people told me that they love to, especially women, told me they could cry on a horse's neck. They could hold on to their horse and cry. They could talk to their horse about things they never tell anybody else. And we all experience this, the same sort of thing, regardless of our age. I think one of the most delightful things I experienced was recently at the Midwest Horse Expo, which my cousin Barb was there. And I never met her till today, but she was at the expo.
In Madison?
Yes.
I was there too.
Oh, you stinker. And I was
We
there.
didn't find each other.
And I was there selling my book.
How
And
did I miss that?
I don't know,
I did too.
60,000 people were there.
That's true.
It's over 3 days.
Yeah.
Most of them are women and little clusters of girls and pairs of women and single women and what I call the drug along husband. You know, the guys are going, I'm on a supporter. Okay.
I'll carry the bags.
Yeah. Is it time to go to the car yet? You know, and the women will drag them around for 8 hours and they'll come back the next day and the next day because there's so much to see and do and shop and learn at the horse expos. It's really, really fun. I'm getting lost in my own story. Where was I going? Horse expo, women. Oh, I saw, among other things, a woman with a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old at 3 months old had been exposed to a horse, a little girl. Her last name was McMillan. And she said, she showed me photos of the little baby girl's response to being put next to a horse. And the kid went, and then when they tried to pull her away, she threw a fit. Okay, so it is there from the beginning. This kid is riding at age 3. It makes my own hair stand on end to recall this. It is so innate. And it starts so early. I've had girls tell me, women tell me, that when they were girls, even if they'd never seen a horse, they tried to ride the dog. They tried to ride the arm of the sofa. One girl rode the mailbox, you know, and we set up our little ropes. I was in my bedroom trying to teach myself at age 7 or 8 to use 4 reins because I'd seen it in the book, you know, the full bridle thing. And I had strings on the back of the chair, and I was going, snaffle, curve, snaffle, curve, you know, teaching ourselves even when nobody was getting us a horse. When my sister and I would be on the Ford Fairlane driving to Iowa before highways, my sister Gail, who's a little younger, we'd be looking out the window and there were horses. And I would go, that's mine. No, that's mine. No, that's mine. We're fighting in the back seat all the way from Albert Lee down 2-lane roads, fighting about horses. You know, she's not horse crazy, but she wanted to be like me, and so she held on for a while. And then she developed allergies. So, but it's just absolutely there. The boys, and I went to Ireland once, and a couple times riding. At a riding school, I learned cross-country jumping, and I called Claire Foley is the name of the woman who runs the riding school. And I asked her about boys and girls. She has a riding school every summer, and kids from all over Europe go there, mostly girls. And I said, what is it with boys? And she said, well, 2 things. The boys don't want to really take care of the horse. They want to get on and they want to go. Also, it hurts their willies, and they won't admit it. So if they can't take the pain or figure out how to do it, you just give up, you know. But the girls are there year after year after year, and I hope I get back there too. Speaking of gender, I have 2 chapters in here. One is called The 1,200-Pound Muscle, and one is called Secret Horses. Because one of the phenomena I found all over the place was that women hide their horses. Not all women, but many women hide the fact they have a horse, hide the fact of what it costs, hide what they've spent on tack. Maybe I'll read you a little bit. I rode around with a vet, Dr. Kathy Ott, who is a terrific, that's my phone, terrific horse jumper, competitive jumper. And it's called Secret Horses. I wrote the book and I can't even find the chapter. And she told me about clients that would call and say, don't put the number of horses on my bill because I don't want my husband to see it. And then one day her husband went out to the barn and there was a mare with a foal, and he said, what's this? He'd never seen the horse, and he didn't know the horse was pregnant. And so there are awkward situations that come up, but women won't be denied. They buy things on layaway. One of my friends, Cindy Piper, has 20 horses. she has them parceled out at different farms. And she said, if Tad ever found out how many horses I have, he'd divorce me. So I put them at different places. But seriously, there is a certain tension between some men and their girlfriends or wives over the issue of owning a horse. And I thought that was very interesting. So I looked into it with various psychologists and sociologists. And horses represent control over a big, scary animal, power, freedom, independence, a lot of things that some men, not all, you're here, you must be one of the good ones, one of the supportive ones, feel about women. They don't want someone to have that autonomy. One woman who was a client at a saddle shop I frequented had to carry a beeper at all times. Her husband had to know where she was at all times. And she had a secret horse. So, but we won't be denied. We just sneak. At one point, I went to Scotland. And this is not just a book about travel and my adventures. There are really deep interviews in here. One of them is with Maxine Kumin, who is poet laureate, Vermont, and she had a Morgan, among other things. She broke her neck driving it, but they didn't stop her. So there are people from the realms of poetry and science and psychology in here. But I thought they would be not as interesting as some first-person adventures here. This one's called Galloping Scotland, and I went 3 years ago. The little quote at the beginning is from one of my favorite authors, Michael Korda, whose family is very famous as movie producers. He wrote a book called Horse People. He's very witty and very funny, and here's something from Horse People. These days, of course, it's mostly girls that are horse crazy, horse struck. Boys can take horses or leave them. With girls, it's as if the teenage Elizabeth Taylor and National Velvet were part of their gene pool. That's who we are. Okay, this is first person from a village in Scotland on a very cool morning in early summer 3 years ago. Tits and teeth, ladies, tits and teeth. Jane called to us over the clatter of 800 hooves on cobblestone, over the cheers of children and adults, over the barking dogs and the flap of blue and yellow banners from windows. Jane set the example, her teeth flashing below glossy russet bangs and pink cheeks under her hunt cap, her bosom thrust forward in her form-fitting tweed jacket. In the wake of the television series Outlander, female tourists now flock to Scotland in search of men, specifically that man. That was not why I was trotting next to Jane on my own redhead, Kingston, a confident chestnut gelding with legs like elephant trunks and a brontosaurus-sized neck set off with a perfectly braided mane. It had been going on 3 years of COVID restrictions, and I was whirling around in my own exhaust fumes on the quest for the essence of horse girldom. I decided I could continue to stay home drinking Sauvignon Blanc, rewatching Outlander star Sam Heughan, and wiping cat hair off the bathroom floor tiles, or I could live. So I combined the two passions and bought a riding vacation on the Scottish border, a challenge for advanced riders only, jubilantly described by the Australian women who run the company as raucous and fast-paced. I paid for it in increments and installments and packed my boots, helmet, and breeches. On this trip, I decided I would not interview, I would not scrutinize, I would not pose the usual questions about background, birth order, age of onset, etc. I would savor Scotland, ride the horses, drink the whiskey, and just appreciate living and breathing and riding, of course. So I sallied off to Scotland for the horses and what's known as the riding the marches, or the common riding. Since the 14th century, locals in the borders with England have galloped the boundaries of their burghs in order to fend them from reivers, that's livestock thieves. The annual reenactments have been male-only events, with a tiny handful of exceptions in the early 20th century, for reasons spurious and mostly involving singing and drinking between rides. This policy was defended with statements such as, "It's aye been so," which I concede, delivered in a Scots accent, is beguiling, if you're rational. Local women even prevented other women from riding in it, as in 1996, when they formed a human barricade on the high street. in the mill town of Hawick, spelled Hawick. I thought it was Haywick. It's Hawick. Still other women went to court to get the right to ride in the events and won. I'd heard about all this in New Zealand while riding with a Scot who returned home each year to take part. I decided I wasn't about to stay home and seethe with envy while the braw laddies had all the fun. We happy few were to take part in a week of ride-outs based in Hawick, leading up to a reenactment of a young Scot called the Cornet, and the Callants, his 3 male attendants, leading hundreds of riders through town, carrying the village pennant in a ceremony honoring the stealing of a pennant from the occupying British in 1514. Off we go. On the morning of the ride-outs themselves, we mounted up in a parking lot on the Tweed River and melded into hundreds of riders, streaming through the village center. We queen-waved our way up the road to applause and cheers. Hooray, went the red-nosed men outside the pubs. Hooray, went the old woman from her balcony. Hooray, went the father and son from the doorway of the curry and kebab shop. Hooray, hurrah, went the families on the sidewalks, people spilling into the gutters, more people lining driveways up the hill and into the countryside. The cornet and his men hit the first pasture, and the whole body of us charged forward in a mad gallop. The first of hours to come. This was about 270 people on horseback. This was not your nice little haunches under, elevated forehand, nose near the vertical, nicely on the bit canter. All of Scotland's border country lay before us, and the horses and local riders knew it. This was the charge of the Light Brigade minus artillery. It was pell-mell pelting straight up hills and down again with no half halts, much less halts. The horses were keen. We were all stuck tight to our saddles, heels down, and eyes half blinded with tears from the wind, the speed, and the joy. Tessa, chief extrovert of the group, she was a prison guard from Holland, gave a few woo-woos and headed her bay gelding for the male foursome at the front of the whole cavalcade. Angela, Ann, Julie, Jane, Shannon, Elise, Kristen, and I were not far behind her. I'd asked for a forward horse, and Susie had given me one in Kingston. Good boy, Kingston, I breathed as we thundered up the deep sheep pastures to the tops and down through slaty fields and up again to views over vast pine plantings, then whipped down a slope, skirting a loch where a sign warned, beware of adders in the loch. Who knew Scotland had adders? Anyway, on we went for about 4 hours, and then we stopped for lunch, which was most welcome. And at that point, I found out I was the oldest woman to ride in the ridings. I was 72. And the oldest man, who was 72, was a retired rugby coach whose last name was Muir. And yes, he was John Muir's cousin. John Muir was from a village right nearby there where we galloped on the beach a couple days later. It's a small world. So, of course, I had to ask the women I was riding with why we do what we do and how is it different than when men choose to ride. So, of course, I had to ask the questions. Why so many women on this and other riding trips? Why so many girls and women owning, rescuing, loving horses? I feel like men ride as a hobby or a profession, said Elise, a rider from Indiana. Women ride as a passion. It's in our blood. And I really believe that, and 30 years of looking at us has confirmed it. Anything you want to insert here? Halfway through this, I realized I don't have my glasses on. No wonder. Wait a minute.
You seem to be doing really well.
Well, I'm kind of faking it, but there we go. How many of you are horse people? Owners, riders, victims, people who pay for it?
All of the above.
Okay. There are some things I have observed in all of this field research. One of the things is birth order. I kid you not. Many, and I mean significantly many of us, are either only children, firstborns, first girl, or first girl after a gap of 3 years or more, which seems to be being a first child again in terms of psychology. Are you?
Firstborn, yes.
Firstborn. See, I'm not kidding. There's stuff out there about us.
And my niece is a horse girl, and she's the firstborn too.
Only first. Okay. Most of us were horse crazy from the get-go. Many of the people I talked to, the first word was horse, or they would point, many of us, and it isn't just where I went, but many of us are from what I call the North Sea mix. We are German, English, Irish, Scots, God knows the Irish, Norse people from that part of the world. And part of that, I think, is genetic, and part of it, I think, is opportunistic. I think in those cultures, women were less oppressed, perhaps, and were allowed to ride more and to be strong and to be, in the case, for example, of Nordic women, were allowed to be warriors as well as mothers and farmers and other things. So I think there's culture, there's nurture, there's age, there's birth order. And I'm open to other suggestions here because it's perpetually interesting to me, even though I think I've summed it up.
Good question. You've been talking about all injuries people have. Have you had any significant injuries over your life from horses?
Oh, thank you. And I didn't even pay you to say that. The usual concussions and, getting your finger caught in the bridle and, that sort of thing. But really, having ridden since I was 8, I've had one really bad accident, and I'll tell you quickly. My extremely difficult mother from Mount Auburn, Iowa. I'm not blaming Iowa. It's genetic. Had come to visit us in St. Paul, and I was going to have to drive her back to Albert Lee after Thanksgiving. And I thought, I can't possibly be alone in the car with this woman for 2 hours unless I go riding first. So, and this is true. So I went out to the pasture, and I live in the city, but I kept my horses in a very simple place outside of St. Paul. And it was kind of a gray, cool day, and I got on my thoroughbred, gelding, who was a gift from a client for whom I'd written a biography. He's a beautiful chestnut thoroughbred. I got on him bareback, which is what I usually do, and we rode out just for a quick ride over the gully and over the hill and up that hill. And I've had horses fall all my life, and usually you can pull your leg up fast. He fell so fast on me that I think I was unconscious for a second, and then I looked up, and he was gone. And I held my foot up, and the foot was at an angle like that, and I went, this is going to be a really good story. because I'm a journalist. And then I went, oh God, I've got to move before shock sets in. Mm-hmm. And no, I don't ride with a cell phone. I know, I should. And the guy I would have called has macular degeneration. He couldn't have gotten me anyway. So I crawled barehanded, ruining my breeches, holding my broken ankle up, down the hill, down the gully, over the rocks, up the other side, into the paddock, over the manure, and rolled under the electric fence, dragged myself up onto a stump, and then got hauled to the worst, most incompetent emergency room I've ever been to in my life. So months later of recuperating, I have 2 plates and 7 screws in that ankle. And that was the only really bad accident I've had in all these years, Chuck. And I think amortized over 60 some years, that's not bad.
That's pretty good.
It's really, isn't it?
Very good, right, Carol?
Yeah. Also, I have met some wonderful people through concussions. Really, this little logo is my last Arabian horse, Shadow, and the girl riding her was Marin. She's now in med school, but she started riding with me, and I don't teach. I just took her as a friend. And Marin was 7. She started riding with me, but I was at yoga class one day years ago, and at a yoga class, sometimes the teacher will say, does anybody have any injuries or conditions we need to accommodate? And I went, concussion. And so at the end of the class, one of the women came up to me and said, what's the concussion from? And I said, horses. And she said, oh, my daughter is so horse crazy. And I said, okay, bring her. And Marin and I went riding every week until she graduated from high school. And I took her to the various hunts, and I introduced her to people who have horses up and down the East Coast that I knew of. And she spent summers out there working for a farm, keeping the horses in condition. And now she's in med school. I'm so proud of her. And as someone once said about the advantage to being an auntie and not a parent, is that you have all the fun and none of the responsibility. So Horse Feed Press comes with Marin and Shadow, and the book is the price of one bag of horse feed. This is how I support my horse, is this now. So yes, I've had accidents, and the thing is about horse people, as I read in the opening, we are kind of macho, and we're kind of proud of our injuries, and we like to talk about it and compare and talk about the wild rides we've had. And I will also tell you that I also drive carriages, and I had a full-time job as a journalist at the Minneapolis Star Tribune for 20 years. But the person I was married to during part of that time was a theater person, so he wasn't home at night. So that wasn't working. So I got a job as a carriage driver at night on weekends for weddings and around St. Paul downtown. It was so much fun, and I made a lot of cash and didn't report it. And I met lovely, lovely people doing the driving. Even drove for weddings down Summit Avenue in St. Paul. And it's just an adventure. But driving, if any of you know, have tried, it is far more dangerous than riding. With riding, if you're lucky, you get off fast and nothing's too broken. With driving, it's a mess, and it's traumatic, and it's bad for the horse as well as you. But I do love it, and I hope to get back to it. I have a Morab I saved out of a kill pen in Louisiana. Morgan Arab Cross, Morab. And he came to me as a beautiful, exquisite little horse with lots of training. I'm pretty sure he drives. I'd like to get back to driving. I had bobsleds and wagonettes and carts and my great-grandmother's sleigh from the Brandon farm. And I do love driving in the winter with the sleigh bells on, going through snow, the dog running alongside, and a bunch of people sitting behind you on this flat bobsled with bales of hay. It's just the most fun. I just love it.
I would have thought driving would be safer than riding. Why is it dangerous?
I think I can't even begin to explain the danger. Equipment, tangles, smashing, dragging, tires blowing out. The first accident I had driving, the runaway that you can't stop. You can't stop them. And you are still there, and parts are being smashed off, and the horse is getting tangled and panicked, and traffic is coming, and it is horrifying. It is horrifying. I have been in an accident once where a weld broke on a little cart with rubber tires. I had a girlfriend with me. I was driving a very well broke Morgan. The weld broke, the metal part under our feet went down. The part of the dashboard lurched into the horse's butt. She freaked out. She bolted. She kicked. She shattered the harness, the shafts. Things flew up into trees. We were being dragged sideways, metal gouging us. I had a knee cut that didn't heal for a year. It is a mess. Do not drive as an alternative to riding unless you have a lot of experience and instruction and just the right horse and really good equipment. It is far messier. And then, of course, the horse is traumatized and may never drive again. It's fun, 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 fun. And by the way, Prairie du Chien in September has the largest carriage meet in America. Go see it. It is beautiful. It's a weekend, and it's on an island, Prairie du Chien, historic house there you could tour. But it is the biggest carriage meet, and among other things, they have classes, and ladies all wear hats, and they wear the lap robes, and it is wonderful. The hats are great. I have to tell you, I have a thing for really beautiful hats, and but you can see traditional driving done the way it should be, with single pairs, 4-in-hand, coaches, carts. It is really, really fun to drive and be driven by someone who knows what they're doing with a good team. And I drove my Morgan Percheron half-brothers for many, many years together. And I miss them terribly. I miss them. They're all buried. They all got old. But I want to get back to it. It's. Do you have the inclination to drive?
I've driven horses all my life. I trained horses for 60 years, drove them all,
Yeah.
showed horses and driving, saw other people have accidents.
And you
I
didn't.
never did.
Okay.
The people that work for me knew if there's an accident in the ring, open the gate, I'm coming out. And that's how we handled it.
What breeds did you train?
Saddlebreds, Arabs, and Morgans.
My favorite. I've ridden 3 and 5 gated.
Well, the last 30 years was Lipizans.
Oh, I've ridden 2 Lipizans. Oh my God, girl. Oh, you should be in my book. It's too late.
Section
Oh,
Volume 2.
Really need to interview Carol because
where have you been? I really should have caught up with you. See, this is the trouble. You always find more fascinating people to put in a book after you printed it.
She's
There's
written
a
her own.
sequel.
You've written your own. What's it
I
called?
did. I had it in my head to bring to you, and they were late picking me up, and I forgot and set it down. So I'll mail you one.
Thank you, Carol. Would you agree driving is more dangerous?
What?
Driving, not in a ring, but it's more of a mess when you.
I never did. We have a racetrack, and so when I was breaking horses, I drive them around the racetrack.
Till they settle
It
down.
was wide open, and you didn't have to worry, and never had an accident ever. So I got real lucky.
God bless you. Where was this?
That was in Michigan. I had 30 years in Iowa, 30 years in Michigan.
See, Morgans and Arabs are my favorite, and I've ridden saddlebreds and love them too. So, yeah, now I've got a Morab, the best of both worlds. Brains, beauty.
Saddlebreds are my favorite, but I did love Lipizans, but saddlebreds are still my favorite.
You know what they say about Lipizans that I think isn't fair? They say they're fat white horses for fat white women. And and I'm neither, but they are wonderful, aren't they? Oh my God, Lipizans.
They're the smartest breed there is and the most long lasting. All
Yep.
mine lived to be 30 and stayed sound.
Yep.
Everybody was still sound at 30. So
My Arab, this one was 34 and sound to the
Really?
day he died. All my Arabs and my Morgans are sound. Yeah. Oh, cool. This is very cool. See, and it's like, oh God, interview. Talking horses. My favorite napkins you can get now through Mare Goods says, let's drink wine and talk about horses. It's, what's your maiden name? Now go back through all the husbands and get to your maiden name.
Mahalik, a Czech name. My grandparents were from Czechoslovakia.
But of course, they created Lipizan. The Poles, the Czechs, the
No,
Germans.
they never had horses. My parents never had horses, just me.
Yeah, but there you are. See, it's a latent gene and you got it. Wow. So have you read The Perfect Horse?
Oh, that is amazing.
Elizabeth Letts.
Yes.
Unbelievable research about, and so much more depth to it than the Disney feature about Miracle of the White Stallions.
Mhm.
The Perfect Horse is about the rescue of the Lipizans and all of their breeding and training.
Is this a book or a movie? Or?
It's a book, and my hair is standing up because I'm so excited about. Yeah, I rode a white Lipizan in Georgia and a gray Lipizan in St. Paul. That a friend of mine, actually a woman who did this quote, owns 2 Lipizans, a black one and a white one. The white gray.
Where was that?
In St. Paul. She's Lynn Warfel of National Public Radio, and she's horse crazy, and she only rides indoors with an instructor, and I'm the opposite. But I
Do you know the trainer up there north of Minneapolis that has Lipizans? There's a professional trainer. She shows all over the United States.
Doggone it. I should. I'd probably recognize her name if you came up with it.
I can't think of it right now, but it'll come to me.
Yeah, that I say that a lot. Oh, wow. See, it's like one of us. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I assume all your travel was of short duration.
Too short, always.
Yeah, because otherwise you would have to really be concerned about the care of who was caring for your horse.
No, I still live in St. Paul, but my horses are cared for where they live. And, I would love to go longer. And the only thing that keeps me is I have a retired Welsh pony that I'm responsible for, but he lives with a couple of Clydesdales up in Wadena. And I have my Morab. And by the way, we'll get into this, but and I have cats. And I'm so in love with them all. It's hard to leave. But yeah, I want to go again. I want to go to Scotland again and Iceland. I've ridden Icelandic.
I was going to ask. I have ridden Icelandic.
Oh,
They're
fun. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, too short. The duration is far too short.
May I tell you one more important thing?
Please.
I rode in Austria with the chief writer of the Spanish Riding School.
Oh, which name?
They're cutters.
Oh, sehr gut. Und du Deutsch sprichst auch.
Yeah,
Oh, du bist Deutsch oder?
they're rendition.
No, you're German.
Although he spoke perfect
Well,
English.
of course.
I went prepared to speak German.
Yeah.
I studied German for a year before I went,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then he spoke perfect English.
They're German, they always speak perfect English, better than we do. Oh, that is so cool. I suspected you might have gone to Vienna and done that. Well,
I've been there 60 times, would you believe?
where's the book?
Where?
Where is your book?
It's
About
on
your-
Amazon. It's on Amazon.
It's on
and
Amazon.
it's called what?
Livery to Lipizans.
I'll send you a copy. I have to bring it tonight.
Where?
I'll have to bring some. Weren't we supposed to bring some here for this lady to sell?
Yeah, that's right, we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We came one
We
day
came
and
on
were
a Monday.
closed, I think.
Yeah. 60 times, and I have never been to the Spanish writing school. Never. I would like to go, but there's no but. I'll just get there. But I'm in the middle. I do biographies, commissioned, big luxurious ones, and I did one for a CEO of a Fortune 400 company, Doug Leatherdale. He was CEO of the St. Paul companies, and he has a farm in Germany. He has trichaners, and they're based there, and they show all over Europe. And so I'm off on a tangent. And he's a horseman. He's gone now. And then Gustav Schickedanz, also from Germany, from Prussia, came over and as a refugee, and I did a book for him that took several years, and he's the one who gave me my first and only thoroughbred, and I don't want another thoroughbred, thank you very much, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, we have stories. I have stories.
My first 30 years with Saddlebreds, Arabs, and Morgans, I was the only woman trainer. They were all men. So every night we'd go out to eat together after the show ended, and they put up with me, I guess, or I put up with them. But it was just interesting because there were no women horse trainers back then
Yeah.
that made a living at it.
Yeah, exactly. And now they're doing better. And still
Yeah.
the markets are, Monty Roberts and Pat Pirelli and
John Lyons.
John Lyons, and wait, the one I like with the Australian accent.
Dan James.
No.
No.
Anyway, Warwick Schiller, Warwick Schiller, who is good, and but the men seem to know how to market themselves really well. There are some women out there that do it, but the guys make the big fortunes that I know of. So, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that's true,
Yeah, as the woman said, as Elise said, when we were in Scotland, we do it for passion. Men do it as a hobby, a profession. Well, congratulations. Can I ask how old you are?
yeah. 88.
At a girl. Seeing how young you look for 88? No,
That's very
seriously.
nice of you to
No,
say.
no.
I think I look terrible with it. But anyway.
You don't. You look far younger. I think horse people live longer. If they don't get
If
killed.
they don't get killed.
Yeah, first.
Yeah, we live longer and we have better stories.
I'm
If we
thankful
remember
for
them.
everybody.
Better
I
story.
think we've been moving all our lives, so you
Yeah.
stay
You
sound
do,
yourself.
you do. I get really insulted. I was telling my cousin Barb here on the way over here. People look at me now, and I am weather beaten because I sail and I ride horses, and I don't take care of my skin. And people go, "Oh, honey, are you still riding?" And I say, "I'm still riding." I hope it's the way I go. It's the way you want to go. Did you like I'm sorry, we'll just do a little of this.
This is
It's
interesting.
awful, isn't it?
It's interesting for us non-horse people.
Oh, maybe. I don't like listening to men talk about football, but did you like the finer Morgans or the chunky ones? The Lippets or any particular strain?
The best one I had was taller than any other Morgan and saddle-bready looking.
Yeah, that's the finer ones. There's some saddlebred
Yeah,
blood they
and
threw in.
that did very well, yeah.
Yeah, they threw in saddlebred blood starting when you were 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
I like the old-fashioned beefy
Chunky
ones.
ones.
Yeah.
Well, the Lipizan people think the Morgans are the closest thing to Lipizan.
I know.
Because they're kind of built the same.
I know. They're Baroque horses. They're
Yeah.
curvy, and they have little ears, big eyes, and they carry themselves like little lions. And yeah, it's wow. See, it's an awful thing to encounter another addict. I can't keep you all night. Is there anything else?
I had something. I've been thinking hard, and you always wonder why there are so many women and what is attractive. And when you started to introduce yourself, you liked a lot of different animals growing up,
Yep.
and I did too.
Yep.
And so I like lots of animals,
Yep.
different kinds,
Yep.
and I love dogs. But
Me
why
too.
is there this different passion about horses? And as you talked, and then you said you ride bareback,
Oh, yeah.
and I do too.
Oh, yeah. Then you know.
You can get physically more integrated with
Yes.
a horse.
Yes.
You're on that horse.
Yes.
And especially bareback,
You're back.
you're part of that horse.
Exactly.
You can have a dog and you can hold it and you can cuddle it, but maybe it's something to do with the size of the horse that you can
For
physically be
me, it
a
was
part of it.
when I had a stressful day at work.
Yeah.
You cannot take that with you when you go riding,
Riding,
because
yeah.
the animal reacts
Exactly.
to
They
everything.
react. Yeah.
It
Yep.
forces you to
Yep.
let that go
Uh-huh.
and focus on what's happening right now.
Yeah,
And it's the
they'll read
one
it.
thing I could do that forces you to do that.
It's
They
very
do read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In attraction, I just had a thought.
Yeah.
When you were saying that, and I have no idea. It's true for me, but I don't know if it is true for anything else. If you'll notice Walt Disney's characters,
Oh, yeah.
they always have very large
Large
eyes.
eyes.
Yeah. Yep.
Babies have very large eyes in relation to the rest of their face.
Yeah.
A horse has very large eyes compared to a dog or a cat
I
or
do.
anything else.
Yep.
And you mentioned that the young child looked up
Yeah. And Lord.
into the eyes. So I can't
Yeah,
help but
I-
wonder if it
that's
has something
probably
to
a
do
part of
with
it.
the size and shape
Mhm.
of the eyes.
That makes sense. It does.
And also the motion of the horse, because I work in Miracles in Motion, the motion of the horse
Here.
mimics walking.
Yes.
So for these riders that we have that all have disabilities, when they're on the horse, the movement is going to move their trunk, their hips, their body,
Yep.
just like walking.
Yep.
So if they're in a wheelchair or have a physical disability, they are able to experience what walking is like. And I think of, like I was very small and not overly athletic, and so maybe that's part of it too. Is that you're doing what athletes do, only the horse is enhancing your powers too.
The reason I gave the thoroughbred to someone else after several years of having a good time with him, he was beautiful and he was smart and he was kind, but we didn't, and you will know, it didn't click like I did with the Arabs.
Yeah.
When I rode my Arabs and my Morgans to a certain extent, I rode inside them.
Yeah, I think
They
you're
were
part
part
of it.
of me.
You know what
The
they're
Arab,
going to
I didn't
do.
ever come unstuck from, even if they dance and they prance and they whirl and they, and I would just laugh because I was in like a
Yeah.
carousel pole, right?
Yeah.
Through the carousel. And, and I wasn't that way with thoroughbred. And when I decided, and I found someone who had lost her warm blood and she was nearby and she came over and looked at him and he looked at her and I swear, I saw it. And I said, that's it.
Mhm.
And she is the best possible person for him. I gave him to her.
Yeah.
And she sees him twice a day and she rides him beautifully. And but you will know from
And as a trainer,
Lipizans,
you'll
etc.
know that once you train it, so our first, at least two, were out of the pasture on a halter, shell and pony, and then a mix. And we didn't know anything, and we trained them to ride. And so then, when you ride them a number of years and you've trained them, even if you train them wrong, because I'm not a schooled rider, I never had a lesson, but you know what they're going to do.
Uh-huh.
You know, you can read them pretty good. It's not that you don't ever fall off, and heavens, I can't count, but you know, you still are part of that horse because, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like I could ride poles without.
Yep.
Doing, you know, with
Yep.
my knees,
Yep.
you know, after a long time, it's
It's
just,
The horse knows you by
they
that
know
time.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Intimacy.
thing.
Yeah.
And at Miracles, we have 18, at least 18 horses out there. Some of them I love, some of them I can't stand.
Yeah.
And the last one that I rode when I was that I was leading in class and I was in a bad mood and I didn't like the horse, I almost quit. And this is the beginning of my 36th year.
Yeah.
Out there. So,
Mood.
but if you don't like
energy,
you know,
It's an
you
energy field.
look at you go, I should not lead this horse.
Yeah.
I don't like him.
Not lead that
He's
horse.
reading me
Yeah, they do.
and
I-
can't get him to do anything.
I have to defer to this lady. Tell me your full name again.
What?
Your full name again?
Carol Gogger.
Carol, I have to defer to you. What do you're older than I am. You've been at it longer. What do you think the difference is between the way men, generally, not all, and women feel about horses? What do you think?
The men that I ran around with when I was showing saddlebreds tended to be a bit feminine.
Well, there's a lot of gay men in the horse world
Yes, there was that too.
that are
But
successful.
that's what I noticed at the time was, you know, besides the ones that were gay, that they tended to be feminine, made the best male horse trainers.
Interesting.
The male horse trainers I knew way back then that were really tough on horses were all big, tough men. And they didn't take anything from horses, you know, they made their lives miserable.
Yeah,
But the gays or the feminine ones became good horse trainers.
yeah. It's true. And, again, my ex and other men I have observed closely don't like doing the grooming and the handling and the fussing and the tending and the noticing. They want to get on and go. They want to do something with it. And I like to get on and go. But I also like the grooming and the picking the feet and the scratching the ears and the rubbing the tail root and getting them to go, with their lips. Oh God, itch me there. Itch me there.
That's right. That's
We had such fun with them, such intimate fun with them.
My first husband was a horse trainer.
See, how did I know you had a first husband?
Well-
I said several minutes ago, go back through
Well,
those.
no,
ones.
that worked out really well. I was married to him for 20 years. We had 2 kids. That worked out well, except I was so much better at it than he was, that as things progressed,
Exactly.
in the beginning, he let me show all the horses. He broke them.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Uh-huh.
Well, then his ego got in the way, and he wanted to show them, and he wasn't as good at showing, so things got tough. Anyway, the second husband I married 10 years later
I knew this.
was shy and knew nothing about horses, and he thought this was just grand. He was going to marry a horse trainer. So the first thing he did, I had a nice horse farm. First thing he did was find a much bigger, outlandish horse farm with this racetrack and a.
Oh, I'm all
apartment
for that.
everything.
Did you get it?
Oh, he said, we have to buy this. I said, really? If you buy this, you're going to have to work as hard as I do. Oh, yeah, I will. He left 1 year later.
Yeah. There we have it. Yeah. See, too young.
Carol kept the horse farm.
Yeah.
And what you said is interesting because in reading her book, I know all of her trainers were women.
Mrs.
Oh, I
Leatherdale.
didn't notice that in the book. Is that right?
Yeah. Mrs. Leatherdale of Leatherdale Farms. She also endorsed my book, bless her heart, who has the great farm in northern Germany and has horses showing in dressage at the highest levels in England and France and Germany and here in Canada. Only hires women to work in the barns. I'm sorry, guys, but they take instruction better, she says. And she's wonderful. She has 3 sons. I mean, she's a super person, but she has learned through the years who takes better care. And on the other hand, where would, and this touches on some political things currently, where would we be without Latin, Mexican, Central American workers in the racing industry, in the barn industry, in stabling, care, agricultural work, without men from.
I've had all women
You've had all women,
working
see?
for me. Yeah. A couple of young boys that started out good, and then they got into cars.
Yeah.
But they might say
Yeah,
that.
that's true. It's true. We are different. And there's nothing that points it up to me more than our approach to horses and our feelings about horses. And that doesn't mean that men don't weep and mourn and miss their horses just like they do with their dogs or anything else. My previous book was called Saved, Rescued Animals and the Lives They Transform. I got Jane Goodall to write the foreword, and Temple Grandin wrote the prologue.
Wow.
And when I went out to sign books and do readings, I took my sister's poodle and I put him on the table with me, because then people would come over and talk to me because I had a dog, and it made everybody feel better. But at one point, a man came up sort of sideways to me and said, I shouldn't say this, but I cried harder when the dog died than when I lost my wife. And I know what he meant, because of the purity of the relationships we have with animals. Absolute love, whatever kind it is, and whether it involves risk and danger and thrills, which horse owning does, or maybe not danger for you. You're much more polished than I am, but it's
Not as a writer, I'm not.
oh well. Here I am. This is my job. Anyway, yeah, it's the deepest. And when I had to bury, and I buried all my horses, there's a chapter in here called Heart Horse. When I was about 41, the horse that was born when I was 13 finally passed away. My Arabian, Gabe. He was one of the Dan Ganey line, Furzon, and he had euthanized, and I buried my saddles and my bridles and my saddle pads, everything. I said, this hurts too much. I will never have another horse. I will never have another horse. The pain was so much. And then a few years later, I had 6 horses. But it's different. The heart horse chapter, that wasn't a term that was used when we were kids. But it is used now, and there's one horse. And I took that horse to school, John Sonnen. I think there's one horse that will grip you. And that was part of my motive for writing Horse Lovers. I wanted to explore anything that hurts that much when you lose it. What is it? What's the feeling? Who has it? Why do we have it in such great numbers? Women. Anyway, thank you for listening. Do you have more questions or
We can take more questions. I'm not in any rush.
comments or stories about
Sure, horse
Critters.
stories.
When we lived in Minneapolis, I worked at Children's Hospital in Minneapolis. My boss was a gal named Roberta Tester, who was a horse woman. She did English riding, jumping poodle.
Yeah, I know that name.